Christmas had always been my mother's favorite holiday. Every December, our family gathered around the same oak dining table that my grandfather had built nearly 40 years ago. The silverware came out of its velvet box. The crystal glasses sparkled beneath the dining room lights. My mother insisted on using the expensive china that spent the other 11 months locked inside a cabinet. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. Inside, we were experts at pretending. I hadn't spent Christmas at my parents' house in almost 3 years. Not because I hated them, because every visit ended the same way. Someone would ask why I wasn't married. Someone else would joke that I worked too much. Before dessert, I'd somehow become the evening's entertainment. After enough holidays like that, staying away became easier than explaining why I no longer wanted to come. So when I parked my car outside my childhood home that snowy December afternoon, I sat behind the steering wheel for almost 5 minutes. The house hadn't changed. The white light still framed the roof. The wreath still hung on the red front door. Even the old wooden reindeer my father built decades ago still leaned slightly to the left. Everything looked exactly as I remembered, except me. At 35, I wasn't the quiet little girl who desperately wanted everyone's approval anymore. Life had changed me, not in loud ways, in necessary ones. I grabbed my overnight bag from the passenger seat. Then I reached for the brown leather folder resting beside it. I looked at it for a long moment. Inside were copies of documents, bank records, property papers, emails, and one contract carrying my name. A contract I had never signed. The signature at the bottom looked almost perfect. Almost. Whoever forged it had copied my handwriting well, but not well enough. I slid the folder back into my bag and whispered to myself, "Not yet." Tonight wasn't about revenge. It was about the truth. The front door opened before I even reached the porch. "There she is," my mother called. She wrapped me in a quick hug before immediately stepping back. "Oh, sweetheart, you look tired. I drove 6 hours." "Still," she smiled, "maybe wear a little makeup before everyone gets here." Some things never changed. I smiled politely. "I'll think about it." Inside, Christmas music floated through the house. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon, roasted turkey, fresh bread, and pumpkin pie. For just a second, I almost forgot why I'd come. Then Rachel walked in. My younger sister looked exactly like the family Christmas card. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect husband following behind her carrying expensive gifts. "There she is," Rachel laughed. "Our mysterious big sister." She hugged me lightly. "Still living in Chicago?" "Yes." "Still working those crazy hours?" "Yes." She tilted her head. "Still single?" I smiled. "Yes." She laughed as if I'd just delivered the punchline myself. "Well, at least you're consistent." Her husband chuckled. I didn't. Growing up, Rachel had always known exactly where to aim. She never insulted people directly. She wrapped every cruel comment inside a joke. That way, if you looked hurt, you were accused of having no sense of humor. I learned that lesson years ago. So instead of answering, I helped my mother carry food into the dining room. By 6 o'clock, everyone had arrived. My Uncle David, my Aunt Susan, 2 cousins, Rachel and her husband, my parents, and me. 8 people, 8 different conversations, 8 different versions of the same family. Dinner started peacefully. People talked about vacations, promotions, football, the weather. I barely spoke. Not because I was nervous, because I was listening. Every laugh, every glance, every sentence mattered tonight. Halfway through dinner, my aunt smiled at me. "So, Emily, seeing anyone these days?" Before I could answer, Rachel jumped in. "Oh, don't ask." The whole table looked toward her. Rachel grinned. "Emily's standards are higher than the national debt." Several people laughed. I smiled politely. I'm happy. Rachel shrugged. Sure. She took another sip of wine. But 35? And still single? She looked around the table dramatically. I guess some people just miss the train. This time, even my mother laughed. Not loudly. Just enough. Just enough for me to notice. Something inside me became perfectly still. I looked around the table. No one noticed my expression. To them, this was tradition. Emily gets teased. Everyone laughs. Emily smiles. Christmas continues. Except this year, Christmas wasn't going to continue the way they expected. I slowly picked up my glass of sparkling water, took one careful sip. Then I placed the glass back onto the table with a soft click. The sound wasn't loud. But somehow, everyone stopped talking. I folded my hands together, looked directly at my mother, then at Rachel. Finally, I spoke in the calmest voice I'd ever used. I didn't drive 6 hours because I missed Christmas. Confused faces stared back at me. I came home because someone in this family forged my signature. The room froze. Rachel's smile vanished. My mother's fork slipped from her hand and hit the plate. Nobody reached for another bite. Nobody laughed. Nobody even breathed. I rested one hand on the leather folder beside my chair, and for the first time that evening, every person at that table realized I hadn't come home to celebrate Christmas. I'd come home with proof. No one moved. The Christmas music was still playing softly from the living room, but inside the dining room, it felt as if someone had pressed pause on the entire world. My mother was the first to speak. What? What are you talking about? Her voice was calm, but I noticed the slight shake in her hand. I looked around the table before answering. I'll explain. Rachel forced out a laugh. Oh, come on, Emily, this isn't funny. I know. I kept my voice steady. That's why I'm not joking. Dad cleared his throat. Maybe we should discuss this after dinner. No, I replied. We've spent years pretending everything was fine. Tonight seems like the perfect time to stop pretending. The room fell silent again. I unzipped my leather bag and placed a thick brown folder on the table. No one reached for it. No one even looked directly at it, almost as if they already knew what might be inside. I found this 6 weeks ago. I opened the folder and removed a single document. It arrived in the mail. My aunt frowned. From who? A law firm. That surprised everyone. Even Rachel's confident smile disappeared for a moment. The letter congratulated me on selling my share of Grandpa's lakeside property. Uncle David blinked. What? I've never owned a lakeside property. I slid the document across the table. So naturally, I thought they had the wrong Emily. Dad adjusted his glasses and picked it up. His face changed within seconds. This. His voice became quieter. This has your signature. No. I shook my head. It has a copy of my signature. Rachel crossed her arms. Anyone can say that. I didn't just say it. I reached back into the folder. I proved it. I placed another stack of papers beside the first. The law firm agreed to investigate after I told them I'd never seen the contract. They hired a handwriting expert. And they concluded the signature was traced from an old passport application. Nobody spoke. I continued. The person who forged it copied my handwriting almost perfectly. But they made one mistake. I pointed to the signature. I stopped writing my capital E like that almost 12 years ago. I looked directly at Rachel. Whoever copied it used an old document. For the first time all evening, Rachel looked nervous. She quickly recovered. So, what are you saying? I'm saying someone sold property using my name. And someone at this table knew exactly how to do it. Dad rubbed his forehead. This can't be real. I wish it wasn't. I removed another paper. This is the bank transfer. Another one. This is the property sale. Another. This is the timeline. Every document landed on the table with a soft tap. Each sound made the room feel heavier. My mother finally whispered, "Emily, why didn't you call us?" I wanted to. I looked at her. Then I realized something. If I called, whoever did this would have time to prepare. The words landed harder than I expected. My aunt slowly leaned back. "You think someone in this family stole from you?" I looked around the room. "I don't think." "I know." Uncle David suddenly became defensive. "Hold on. Are you accusing all of us?" "I'm accusing the person responsible." Rachel rolled her eyes. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" She folded her arms tighter. "Absolutely." "Then answer one question." She shrugged confidently. "Go ahead." "When Grandpa died, who insisted we sign every document as quickly as possible?" Rachel hesitated. "It was an emotional time." "That's not what I asked." Nobody answered. I answered for them. "You did." Rachel looked toward Mom. "Seriously, you're letting her interrogate me?" Mom looked overwhelmed. I I don't know what's happening." "No," I said softly. "I think you do." The room became painfully quiet. I reached into the folder one last time. This is the only page I haven't shown anyone. Every eye followed the paper in my hand. "It's a security camera photo." Rachel frowned. "What security camera?" "The one inside the attorney's office." Her face lost its color. The image wasn't perfectly clear, but it showed one person dropping off the signed contract. The face couldn't be seen. Only the back. A woman, about Rachel's height, wearing a long beige coat. Rachel laughed nervously. "So? Half the women in this town own beige coats." "True." I nodded. "They do." I turned the photo over. "And that's exactly what I thought." So I almost ignored it. I paused. Until I noticed the handbag. Rachel instinctively looked down beside her chair. The same designer handbag rested on the floor. The exact same limited edition leather bag she'd proudly shown everyone just before dinner. Only 200 had ever been made. The color, the stitching, the gold buckle. Everything matched. No one said a word. Rachel slowly pulled the bag closer to her feet. It was the first time all evening. She looked afraid. I closed the folder. I'm not asking anyone to confess tonight. I'm simply giving the truth a chance to speak first. Then I stood up from the table. I'll let everyone think about what they've heard. As I walked toward the guest room, I could hear whispers beginning behind me. For years, my family had laughed whenever I entered the room. Tonight. They started whispering the moment I left. And deep down, I knew something even bigger was hiding behind those forged papers. The contract wasn't the whole story. It was only the beginning. I closed the guest room door behind me, but didn't lock it. If someone wanted to talk, they knew where to find me. I set the leather folder on the small desk beneath the window and looked outside. Snow had started falling again, covering the front yard in a blanket of white. Everything looked peaceful. The house wasn't. Even through the walls, I could hear muffled voices from downstairs. Someone was crying. Someone was arguing. Someone kept saying my name. For years, I'd imagined what it would feel like to finally confront my family. I expected anger, satisfaction, maybe even relief. Instead, I just felt tired. 6 weeks earlier, none of this had existed. I had been living my ordinary life in Chicago, working 60-hour weeks as a financial compliance manager for a healthcare company. My days were spreadsheets, audits, and endless meetings. Not exactly exciting, but I loved it. Because numbers didn't lie. People did. It all started on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. My receptionist walked into my office carrying a certified envelope. "Emily, this requires your signature." I thanked her and barely looked at it. I assumed it was another insurance document. Instead, it was a letter from a law firm I'd never heard of. The first sentence made no sense. Congratulations on the successful transfer of your ownership interest. I read it 3 times, then a fourth. My stomach tightened. Ownership interest? Transfer? What were they talking about? Attached was a copy of a signed contract. My name appeared at the bottom. The signature looked like mine. Almost. Anyone else would have accepted it. But I'd been signing legal documents for over a decade. I knew every curve of my own handwriting. Something was wrong. That same afternoon, I called the law firm. The receptionist transferred me to an attorney named Michael Turner. He sounded surprised. You don't remember signing the sale agreement? I've never seen it. There was a long pause. Ms. Carter, are you saying the signature isn't yours? I'm saying someone forged it. The silence on the other end of the line lasted several seconds. Then he said something that changed everything. If that's true, we have a much bigger problem. Within days, the firm launched an internal investigation. They checked security footage, compared signatures, reviewed emails, interviewed employees. I expected them to tell me there had been a misunderstanding. Instead, every new discovery made things worse. The buyer had paid nearly $400,000 for Grandpa's share of the lakeside property. The money had been transferred. The paperwork had been approved. Taxes had already been filed. Legally, it looked complete, except for one detail. I had never agreed to any of it. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Emily? It was Dad. You can come in. He opened the door slowly. For the first time in years, he looked older than I remembered. His shoulders sagged. His eyes avoided mine. He closed the door behind him. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. No. He sighed. I think I do. He sat in the chair across from me. When your grandfather died, I let your mother and Rachel handle most of the paperwork. You trusted them. I trusted family. I nodded. So did I. Dad rubbed his hands together. Emily, if Rachel really did this, I didn't say she did. You certainly implied it. I said the evidence points somewhere. He looked at the folder. Do you believe she's guilty? I answered honestly. I don't know. His eyebrows lifted. I know she had the opportunity. I know she had access to old documents. I know the security photo raises questions. But believing isn't enough. I need proof. Dad looked relieved. So you aren't here to destroy the family? I smiled sadly. If I wanted to destroy this family, I would have mailed these papers to everyone weeks ago. I'm here because I wanted someone to tell me the truth before lawyers did. He stared at the floor. I don't think your mother knows. I hope you're right. And Rachel? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. Dad stood to leave, then stopped at the door. There's something I never told you. I looked up. The week before Grandpa died, he called me. What did he say? Dad swallowed hard. He asked if you were happy. I frowned. That's all? He said everyone worried too much about your marriage. Dad's voice cracked. He told me. Dad looked straight into my eyes. Emily has always been the strongest one. Just don't let them mistake her kindness for weakness. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Grandpa had seen it. Years before I did. Dad wiped his eyes. I should have protected you. You were always defending yourself. And I kept pretending everything was fine. He quietly left the room. I sat there for several minutes, thinking about Grandpa, about kindness, about weakness. People often confuse the two. Kind people forgive, weak people surrender. They aren't the same. Another knock came. This one was quicker, sharper. Before I could answer, the door opened. Rachel stepped inside. She folded her arms. So, she said with a tight smile, are we finally alone? I nodded. I guess we are. She looked toward the folder. You really think you've figured everything out, don't you? I think I know more than I did yesterday. Rachel laughed softly. You always were dramatic. I stayed silent. She walked closer until she stood beside the desk. Then she leaned forward. If you're planning to accuse me, her smile returned. You'd better make sure you know the whole story. I met her eyes. What part am I missing? Rachel's smile faded. The part where Grandpa changed his will. The words hit me like ice water. What? She took one step back. Oh, I guess nobody told you. Then she turned, walked out of the room, and quietly closed the door behind her. I stared at the closed door, my heart pounding. A forged contract was one thing, but a secret will could change everything. I didn't sleep that night. Rachel's words echoed in my mind over and over. Grandpa changed his will. If that was true, then why hadn't anyone told me? And more importantly, why now? I looked at the clock. 2:17 a.m. The house was silent. I slipped out of the guest room with my phone and the leather folder tucked under my arm. The hallway looked exactly as it had when I was a teenager. Family photos lined the walls, Christmas mornings, summer vacations, graduation day. Every picture showed smiling faces. None of them showed the arguments that happened after the cameras were put away. As I walked downstairs, I noticed a light glowing beneath my father's office door. Someone was awake. I knocked softly. Come in. Dad was sitting behind his desk with an old cardboard box open in front of him. The moment he saw me, he sighed. I figured you wouldn't be sleeping. Neither are you. He smiled weakly. I've been looking for something. I stepped closer. The box was filled with old photo albums, tax records, greeting cards, and dozens of neatly labeled folders. Dad pulled out a yellow envelope. I haven't opened this in years. He handed it to me. Across the front, written in my grandfather's handwriting, were 6 simple words. For Emily. Open only if necessary. My heart skipped. When did he write this? A week before he passed away? And you never gave it to me? Dad lowered his head. He told me only to give it to you if the family ever fought over money. I let out a bitter laugh. So? Now qualifies. He nodded. I think it does. My fingers trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The paper had yellowed with age. I recognized Grandpa's handwriting immediately. My dear Emily, if you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. I swallowed hard. You have always been the one least interested in my money, which is exactly why I trusted you the most. My eyes filled with tears. Families don't usually fall apart because of love. They fall apart because someone convinces themselves they're owed more than everyone else. I paused. Every word felt painfully accurate. Dad remained silent. I continued reading. Several months ago, I decided to revise my estate plan. Not because I wanted to punish anyone, but because I wanted to protect what I spent my life building. I looked up. Dad. He already knew. He simply nodded. I returned to the letter. The lakeside property will remain divided equally among my grandchildren. Equal. Not just Rachel. Not just me. Equal. Then came the sentence that changed everything. If any beneficiary attempts to deceive, pressure, or manipulate another heir into surrendering their share, that beneficiary shall immediately lose all inheritance rights. I stopped breathing. Dad whispered, I forgot that clause was in there. No. I looked at him. You didn't forget. You never read it. He closed his eyes. I trusted the attorney. So did everyone else. I looked back at the letter. Grandpa had signed it, dated it. Everything appeared legitimate. I carefully placed the letter inside the folder. If this is real, it is. Dad interrupted quietly. I was there when he signed it. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. If Grandpa had added that clause, and if someone really forged my signature, then they hadn't just committed fraud, they had accidentally destroyed their own inheritance. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mom appeared in the doorway wearing her robe. She looked exhausted. What are you two doing? Dad answered first. We're talking. She looked at the open envelope. Her expression changed instantly. You showed her the letter? I had to. Mom stared at him in disbelief. We agreed never to bring that up again. My heart skipped. We? Dad slowly stood. You knew? Mom's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know about any forgery. Then what did you know? She hesitated. For several seconds, she couldn't meet my eyes. Finally, she whispered, I knew your grandfather changed the will. The room felt smaller. You knew, and you never told me? She started crying. Rachel begged me not to. Every muscle in my body tensed. Why? Mom covered her face. She said telling you would only start another fight. Dad stared at her in shock. So you stayed silent? I thought I was protecting the family. No, I said quietly. You were protecting Rachel. Mom looked at me with tears streaming down her cheeks. It wasn't supposed to become this. I shook my head. No. It became this the moment everyone decided keeping secrets was easier than telling the truth. Before anyone could respond, the front door suddenly opened. At 3 o'clock in the morning, all three of us froze. Dad looked toward the hallway. Who would be coming here now? The sound of footsteps crossed the wooden floor. Then a man's voice called from the entrance. Rachel? I know you're awake. I need to talk to you. None of us recognized the voice. Mom looked terrified. Dad walked toward the hallway. I followed close behind. Standing just inside the front door was a man in a dark winter coat, snow covering his shoulders. He looked anxious. The moment Rachel came rushing down the stairs, his face turned pale. He held up a thick envelope. We have a problem. Rachel grabbed his arm. What are you doing here? He pulled away. The buyers know. Rachel's face lost every trace of color. They know. The signature was fake. And in that moment, every person in the house realized the nightmare had only just begun. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The only sound in the house was the wind rattling the Christmas wreath against the front door. Rachel stood frozen on the staircase. The man in the dark coat looked from her to the rest of us, realizing he had walked into something much bigger than he expected. Dad stepped forward. Who are you? The man swallowed. My name is Daniel Brooks. I represented the investment group that purchased the lakeside property. My stomach tightened. So this was one of the buyers. Rachel quickly forced a smile. Daniel, this isn't a good time. No, he replied. It's exactly the right time. He held up the thick envelope. Our attorneys received a call this afternoon. He looked directly at me. From your law firm. Everyone's eyes turned toward me. I nodded once. I told them the signature wasn't mine. Daniel sighed. The sale has now been suspended. Rachel's voice rose. What? The funds have been frozen until the investigation is complete. Her face turned white. That can't happen. It already has. The room grew painfully quiet. Daniel continued. Our investors are asking questions. They want to know who signed the documents and who benefited from the sale. Rachel folded her arms. Then answer them. Daniel looked disappointed. I can't. Because the financial records don't make sense. Those words caught my attention. What do you mean? He opened the envelope and removed several printed pages. The purchase price was $420,000. I know. But only $270,000 reached the estate account. Dad frowned. Where did the rest go? Daniel slowly looked toward Rachel. That's exactly what we're trying to find out. My mother gasped. Rachel immediately shook her head. He's lying. Daniel calmly handed the papers to Dad. These are certified transfer records. Dad's hands trembled as he read them. His face slowly drained of color. Oh my God. Mom stepped closer. What is it? Dad looked up. There's another bank account. Rachel's breathing became uneven. I can explain. No. Dad interrupted. You've had plenty of chances to explain. Daniel pointed to one line on the document. $150,000 was transferred into a private account the same day the property was sold. I stared at the account number. It meant nothing to me. Until Daniel spoke again. The account owner is listed as R. Collins. Rachel Collins. My sister. No. Mom whispered. Rachel. Rachel looked around the room, searching for someone to believe her. It wasn't stealing. Her words shocked everyone. She hadn't denied receiving the money. She'd only argued about what to call it. Dad's voice hardened. What do you mean it wasn't stealing? Rachel took a deep breath. I deserved it. The sentence echoed through the hallway. For the first time in my life, I realized my sister truly believed that. She looked directly at me. You left. You moved to Chicago. You barely visited. You didn't help Grandpa. I was here. I took care of everything. So yes, I took what I earned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You forged my name. I protected the family. You took money that wasn't yours. I sacrificed years of my life. She shouted so loudly that the windows seemed to shake. I gave up promotions. I stayed in this town. I cared for Grandpa while you built your perfect career. Tears streamed down her face. And now you want half of everything? I answered quietly. I never wanted more than what Grandpa decided. Rachel laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. You always had choices. The room fell silent again. Dad slowly placed the financial records on the hallway table. When did this start? Rachel looked away. He repeated the question. When? Finally, she whispered. About 2 years before Grandpa died. My heart skipped. What? She nodded slowly. He asked me to help pay his bills. I handled his accounts. Daniel frowned. Our investigation found something else. Rachel closed her eyes, almost as if she already knew what he was going to say. There were multiple withdrawals. Not just one. Small amounts. $2,000. $5,000. $8,500. They happened over almost 18 months. Dad stared at his daughter in disbelief. You've been taking money? For years? Rachel broke down. I was going to put it back. When? Nobody answered. When the house sold. When my business worked. When life got easier. There was always going to be a when. She slid down onto the bottom stair, crying into her hands. For a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the forged signature, the lies, the jokes at dinner, the years of making me feel like I didn't belong. This hadn't happened because of one bad decision. It had happened because every lie had been covered by another. Daniel cleared his throat. I'm afraid there's one more thing. None of us wanted to hear it. The district attorney has been notified. Mom looked up in horror. You mean? Daniel nodded. Because forged legal documents were used in a property sale, this is now a criminal investigation. No one breathed. Rachel looked at me with tears in her eyes. Emily, for the first time in years, I'm asking you for help. I looked at my younger sister, the same sister who had laughed at me only a few hours earlier, the same sister who had called me 35 and still single, while everyone else joined in. She wasn't smiling anymore. She wasn't confident anymore. She looked terrified. But before I could answer, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Its headlights illuminated the snow-covered yard. Two people stepped out, both wearing long, dark coats. One carried a leather briefcase. The other held an official-looking folder. Dad looked through the window and whispered, "They're here." Daniel nodded slowly. The investigators. Christmas morning was only 6 hours away, and instead of opening presents, our family was about to answer questions that could change our lives forever. The black SUV came to a stop in front of the house. No one moved. Snowflakes drifted through the headlights as two people stepped onto the porch. One was a woman in her early 40s carrying a leather briefcase. The other, a tall man with a navy overcoat, held a thick file under his arm. The doorbell rang. Once, then again. Dad looked at all of us. "I'll answer it." Rachel grabbed his wrist. "No." Her voice trembled. "Please, don't." Dad gently pulled his hand away. "Rachel?" He looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I've protected this family for far too long." He opened the door. "Good evening," the woman said politely. "I'm Special Investigator Laura Bennett." She showed her identification. "This is Investigator Mark Ellis. We apologize for the late visit. We understand it's Christmas Eve." Dad nodded silently. Laura looked inside the house. "We're looking for Rachel Collins and Emily Carter." Rachel slowly stood. "I'm Rachel." I stepped forward. "I'm Emily." Laura gave a small nod. "We're not here to arrest anyone." Rachel released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "We're here to collect statements and preserve evidence before anything disappears." Those last 4 words echoed through the hallway. "Before anything disappears." Laura entered the house. "We'd like everyone to remain together. No phones. No private conversations. No one leaves until we're finished." Everyone agreed. Mark placed his folder on the dining table. "We've been working with the law firm since yesterday." He looked at me. "Ms. Carter, thank you for reporting the forgery immediately." I nodded. It was the right thing to do. Rachel stared at the floor. Laura opened her briefcase. "We've already confirmed that the signature on the property agreement doesn't match the original digital records." Dad frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means the signed page was substituted after the final draft was prepared." The room fell silent. Someone hadn't just forged my signature. They had altered the legal documents after they were completed. Laura continued. "We also obtained email records." Rachel's head lifted instantly. "What emails?" Laura removed several printed pages. "The attorney handling the sale received messages from someone using Emily Carter's email address." I blinked. "What?" "I never sent any emails." "We know." She looked directly at me. "The account used wasn't yours. It was a fake email created 3 days before the sale." My stomach tightened. Someone hadn't only copied my signature. They had impersonated me online. The planning behind it was far more detailed than I'd imagined. Laura placed another document on the table. "We traced the login history." Rachel looked nervous again. "It originated from this town." Dad whispered. "Oh, Rachel." She immediately shook her head. "I didn't make any fake email." Laura remained calm. "We're not making conclusions tonight. We're gathering facts." Then Mark spoke. "We have one question for everyone. Who had access to Emily's old personal documents?" Everyone looked around the room. My mother answered first. "There were old family files in the attic." Dad nodded. "Passport copies, tax returns, school records, everything." Laura wrote something in her notebook. "So multiple people had access." Rachel spoke quietly. I wasn't the only one. It was the first true thing she'd said all night. I looked toward Uncle David. He crossed his arms. "Don't look at me." I haven't been in that attic for years. Aunt Susan nodded in agreement. So haven't I. Mark continued writing. Then he looked toward Daniel. You mentioned a missing $150,000. Daniel handed over the transfer records. Mark studied them carefully. After nearly a minute, he looked surprised. This isn't the final destination. What do you mean? Dad asked. The money didn't stay in Rachel's account. Rachel's eyes widened. It didn't? Mark turned another page. 2 days later, the entire amount was transferred again. Everyone stared at him. To where? Mark looked at the account information. His expression changed. This account belongs to... He paused. Collins Family Holdings, LLC. Dad frowned. We don't own a company. Mom looked confused. We've never had one. Laura slowly closed her notebook. According to state records? You do. The room froze. Dad shook his head. That's impossible. Laura calmly replied. The company was registered 18 months ago. The registered address. She looked around the room. Is this house? Nobody understood, not even Rachel. I've never heard of that company. Laura studied her face carefully. For the first time that evening, she seemed to believe Rachel's confusion was genuine. Whoever created the company listed 3 officers. Dad whispered. Who? Laura looked down at the documents, then back up. The first officer is Rachel Collins. Rachel's shoulders dropped. The second, she hesitated, is Margaret Collins. Mom covered her mouth. What? And the third officer, Laura's voice became quieter, is William Collins. Dad's face turned pale. I never signed anything. Laura nodded. That's exactly why we're here. Someone had created a company using 3 family members' names, but now, it looked like more than one signature might have been forged. I slowly opened my leather folder again. One memory suddenly came rushing back. A family barbecue, almost 2 years ago. Rachel had walked around with a clipboard asking everyone to sign what she called insurance paperwork. I remembered refusing because I was leaving early. Dad had signed without reading it. Mom had signed too. At the time, it had seemed completely ordinary. Now, it didn't. I looked at Dad. Do you remember signing papers at Rachel's barbecue? He frowned. Very vaguely. I thought it was homeowner's insurance. Rachel's eyes suddenly filled with panic. No, she whispered. No. Laura looked directly at her. What is it? Rachel slowly sat down. I think... Her voice cracked. I think I know who really planned all of this. Every person in the room turned toward her. She looked at the front window, as if expecting someone else to walk through the door. Then she whispered a name none of us expected. My husband. Silence. Complete silence. For the second time that night, the entire story changed. The room fell completely silent. Rachel's words hung in the air. My husband. No one knew how to respond. Mom stared at her daughter in disbelief. Dad slowly removed his glasses. Daniel looked at the investigators. Even Laura Bennett, who had remained calm all night, paused before asking her next question. Rachel, tell us exactly what you mean. Rachel covered her face with both hands. For nearly a minute, she couldn't speak. Finally, she whispered, I didn't plan any of this. I looked at her carefully. A few hours earlier, I would have dismissed that as another lie. Now, I wasn't so sure. Laura pulled out a chair. Sit down. Rachel obeyed. Start from the beginning. She took a shaky breath. 18 months ago, Jason wanted to start a real estate investment company. Jason, my brother-in-law, the man everyone admired, the successful businessman, the devoted husband, the perfect son-in-law. Rachel continued. He said Grandpa's property was sitting there doing nothing. He kept saying we could sell it, invest the money, and everyone would make even more. Dad frowned. I never agreed to that. Rachel nodded. I know. He said you'd never understand modern investing. Daniel folded his arms. So he created Collins Family Holdings? Rachel nodded slowly. Yes. Laura asked, did you sign the registration documents? I signed some papers. What papers? Rachel looked embarrassed. I didn't read them. Dad let out a long sigh. You signed legal documents without reading them? Jason always handled paperwork. She answered quietly. He told me where to sign. I felt a knot form in my stomach. That sounded familiar. Grandpa used to say the easiest person to deceive wasn't the foolish one. It was the trusting one. Laura wrote several notes. What about Emily's forged signature? Rachel looked directly at me. I swear. I never copied your signature. Then who did? Rachel answered without hesitation. Jason. No one spoke. She continued. He had access to all the family files. When Mom cleaned the attic last year, he volunteered to organize everything. Mom's eyes widened. That's right. He spent almost an entire weekend up there. I remembered that weekend. Jason had proudly labeled every storage box. Everyone praised him for being so helpful. None of us questioned why he wanted access to decades of family records. Laura looked at Mark. Search warrant. Mark nodded immediately and stepped outside to make a phone call. Rachel kept talking. At first, I believed everything Jason told me. He said the company would protect the family. He said everyone would receive more money. He said Emily wouldn't care because she never wanted the property. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. I believed him. I stayed silent. Not because I forgave her, because I was trying to understand. There was a difference. Daniel opened another file. Our investigation found something else. Laura looked up. What? Daniel placed several photographs on the table. They were taken yesterday. The first showed Jason entering a downtown bank. The second showed him carrying 2 large cardboard boxes. The third showed him leaving through the back entrance 30 minutes later. What was in the boxes? Dad asked. We don't know, Daniel answered. But according to bank employees, he emptied a safety deposit box. Rachel's breathing became uneven. He never told me about a safety deposit box. Laura looked at her carefully. Did your husband control the finances? Rachel nodded. Completely. My paycheck went into our joint account. He managed our investments. He paid the bills. I trusted him. The room grew quiet again. For years, everyone believed Rachel controlled the family. Now it appeared someone else had been controlling her. Mark returned a few minutes later. The judge approved the warrant. Laura stood. We're sending officers to Jason's office and home immediately. Dad looked confused. Where is Jason now? Rachel checked her phone. No messages, no missed calls. He said he was meeting clients. Daniel frowned. His office has been closed since noon. Rachel looked up. What? We drove by before coming here. The parking lot was empty. Laura's phone suddenly rang. She answered immediately. This is Bennett. She listened without speaking. Her expression slowly hardened. When? Another pause. Are you certain? Everyone watched her anxiously. She ended the call. What happened? I asked. Laura looked around the room. Jason's assistant just reported him missing. Rachel stood up so quickly her chair fell backward. Missing? Laura nodded. He emptied his office. He deleted company files. He canceled tomorrow's meetings. And she hesitated. The airport confirmed someone matching his passport boarded a flight to Mexico 2 hours ago. Mom gasped. No. Rachel's face turned completely white. He left? Daniel answered quietly. It looks that way. Tears streamed down Rachel's face. He promised we'd spend Christmas together. No one said anything. Because the truth had become painfully clear. Jason hadn't planned a family business. He had planned an escape. He had taken the money. He had used forged documents. And when everything began falling apart, he disappeared. Laura closed her notebook. This investigation is no longer just about fraud. It has become an international financial crime case. I looked out the front window. The snow was still falling. Christmas morning had finally arrived. Children across the neighborhood would soon wake up to presents beneath their trees. Inside our house, we were waiting to learn whether the man we trusted most had stolen far more than money. Because if Jason had planned this for 18 months, then the forged contract, the fake company, and the missing funds were probably only a small part of a much larger scheme. And somewhere beyond the border, Jason believed he'd gotten away with all of it. He was wrong. Christmas morning arrived without a single present being opened. The gifts remained untouched beneath the tree. No one had the heart to celebrate. Mom sat quietly on the couch, staring at the blinking lights wrapped around the Christmas tree. Dad stood by the living room window, watching police vehicles come and go from the driveway. Rachel hadn't stopped crying. For the first time in years. No one cared that I was 35 and still single. None of those jokes mattered anymore. Laura Bennett closed her laptop and looked around the room. We've confirmed Jason boarded a flight to Cancun. Rachel wiped her eyes. So, he's gone. Laura didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at Mark. Mark smiled slightly. Not exactly. Every head turned. What do you mean? Dad asked. Mark placed a printed report on the coffee table. Jason made one very expensive mistake. I leaned forward. What mistake? He assumed money disappears the moment it's transferred. Laura shook her head. It doesn't. Every wire transfer leaves a trail. Daniel nodded in agreement. The company accounts. The personal accounts. The investment accounts. We can follow every dollar. Rachel whispered. He always told me no one could trace cryptocurrency. Laura gave a small smile. He watched too many movies. This wasn't a Hollywood heist. It was a financial crime. She pointed to the report. Yesterday afternoon, Jason moved almost all the missing money into 3 separate accounts. But he couldn't move all of it. Why not? Mom asked. Because one transfer failed. The room went silent. Laura continued. The bank flagged it as suspicious. By law, the funds were frozen before they left the country. Dad let out a slow breath. How much? Mark answered. Almost $118,000. Rachel closed her eyes. So he didn't even get everything. No, Laura replied. And that's not all. She pulled another document from her briefcase. Jason booked a flight to Mexico. But he also booked a return flight? Everyone looked confused. A return flight? Laura nodded. For December 28th. Dad frowned. If he planned to escape. Why buy a return ticket? Daniel answered. Because he never expected anyone to discover the fraud before Christmas. He thought he'd return after the holidays. Rachel stared at the floor. He told me it was a business conference. Her voice cracked. I believed him. No one judged her. Not anymore. She had made terrible decisions. But she had also been manipulated. There was a difference. Laura's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Then she smiled. I've been waiting for this. What is it? I asked. The search team has entered Jason's office. Mark added, they've already found something. Laura switched her tablet around so we could see. Several photographs filled the screen. Filing cabinets, boxes of documents, external hard drives, and one large wall safe hidden behind a framed painting. Dad stared at the image. I've been in that office. I never noticed a safe. Most people wouldn't, Laura replied. The painting covered it perfectly. Daniel looked at another photo. They opened it? Laura nodded. About 10 minutes ago. What was inside? She took a deep breath. Cash. Multiple passports. Corporate seals. Blank legal forms. And, she paused, a folder labeled. She looked directly at me. Emily Carter. My heart skipped. There was another folder with my name on it. What was inside? Laura looked almost as shocked as I felt. Copies of your birth certificate. Your old passport. Your college transcripts. Credit reports. And several unsigned legal documents. I felt sick. He was still using my identity. Laura nodded. It appears he wasn't finished. Rachel covered her mouth. Oh my God. Daniel slowly turned another page. There are at least 4 more properties connected to Colin's family holdings. Dad looked stunned. 4? Laura nodded. It appears the lakeside property wasn't the first transaction. It was simply the first one someone questioned. The room became unbearably quiet. How many lies had gone unnoticed? How many signatures had been forged? How many people had trusted Jason without ever asking questions? Laura stood. We'll need everyone to provide formal statements today. Dad nodded immediately. So will I. Mom wiped away her tears. I'll tell you everything I remember. Rachel looked at me. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Emily, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked at the Christmas tree, at the ornaments Grandpa used to hang every year. Then I looked back at my sister. Forgiveness isn't the first step. She lowered her head. The first step, I said quietly, is telling the whole truth. Rachel nodded. I will. And I won't protect him anymore. At that exact moment, Laura's phone rang again. She answered. After only a few seconds, her expression changed. What? She stood completely still. When did that happen? The room fell silent. She ended the call and looked directly at us. Jason never made it to his hotel. Rachel's face turned pale. What do you mean? Laura spoke slowly. 3 hours after landing, he disappeared. No credit card activity. No phone signal. No hotel check-in. No confirmed sightings. Daniel frowned. So where is he? Laura closed the file. That's exactly what we're trying to figure out. I looked out the window at the falling snow. Jason had vanished, but people like him rarely disappeared without a plan. If he was still running, it meant he was protecting something. Or someone. And I had a feeling the biggest secret in our family's history still hadn't been uncovered. By the afternoon of Christmas Day, our house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a command center. Investigators moved quietly between rooms. Boxes of documents sat on the dining room table where Christmas dinner had been served only the night before. Coffee replaced wine. Evidence replaced presents. No one talked about opening gifts anymore. No one even remembered they were there. Laura Bennett closed another file and looked at me. Emily, there's something we need you to see. She placed a silver USB drive on the table. It was hidden inside Jason's office safe. I frowned. What's on it? We haven't viewed everything. But one folder stood out. She connected the drive to her laptop. A list of folders appeared. Taxes, property deals, investment accounts, and one labeled Insurance Plan. Dad frowned. Insurance? Laura opened it. Inside were dozens of scanned documents, family photographs, medical records, copies of driver's licenses, passports, birth certificates. Jason had built a digital archive of our entire family. Mom whispered, "Why would he need all of this?" Mark answered quietly, "Identity fraud." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. He wasn't just stealing money. He was collecting identities. Laura opened another folder. This one was titled, Future Projects. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Each row listed a family member. Our names, dates of birth, credit scores, estimated assets, even handwritten notes. Beside my name was a sentence that made my stomach turn. Lives alone. Easy to impersonate. I couldn't breathe. For years, I'd believed the jokes about being single were simply cruel family humor. Now I wondered, had Jason encouraged them? If everyone believed I was distant from the family, no one would question why paperwork was signed without me. Laura looked at me. I'm sorry. I nodded slowly. It wasn't just about property. No, she replied. It appears he was studying everyone. Rachel burst into tears again. I had no idea. I know, Laura said gently. The evidence supports that. Rachel looked at me. Emily. I let him convince me you didn't care. I repeated his words. I made those jokes. I thought they were harmless. She covered her face. But they weren't. I looked at my younger sister. For years, I'd waited to hear those words. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted the truth. And finally, it was sitting in front of us. Dad quietly walked over to me. I failed you. You don't have to say that. Yes, I do. He placed a hand on my shoulder. I laughed when I should have stopped it. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. I kept telling myself it was only teasing. His eyes filled with tears. But every time I stayed silent, I gave everyone permission to keep doing it. Mom joined him. She couldn't even look me in the eyes. I always asked you to be the bigger person, she whispered. I never asked Rachel to be kinder. Those words hurt more than I expected. Because they were true. Families often ask the quiet person to stay quiet. Not because it's fair, because it's easier. Laura closed the laptop. There's one last document. She opened a scanned letter. It wasn't written by Jason. It was written by Grandpa. Addressed to the entire family. The letter had never been mailed. It had been hidden inside Jason's safe. Dad recognized the handwriting immediately. Oh, he stole this. Laura handed it to him. Dad began reading aloud. If you're reading this together, I hope you've remembered something I tried to teach all of you. Money should never decide who deserves love. The child who asks for the least is often the one who has carried the most. Mom began crying. Dad's voice shook as he continued. Emily doesn't need you to rescue her. She needs you to respect her. I closed my eyes. Grandpa had understood me better than anyone else, even after he was gone. He was still protecting me. Before anyone could speak, Laura's phone rang. She answered immediately. Yes? Her expression changed. She turned on the speaker. A voice came through. We've located Jason. Everyone froze. Rachel stood up so quickly her chair scraped across the floor. Where is he? The officer answered. He never left Mexico. He was detained while attempting to withdraw money using a fraudulent passport. Laura nodded. Is he cooperating? There was a brief pause. Not exactly. What did he say? The officer took a deep breath. He said, Tell Emily she's looking at the wrong person. The room fell silent. Laura slowly lowered the phone. Dad frowned. What does that mean? I looked at the family gathered around me. Jason had been caught. The money was being recovered. The forged documents had been exposed. Everything should have been over. And yet, his final message suggested one terrifying possibility. Someone else had been involved from the very beginning. And if Jason was telling the truth, the biggest betrayal in our family still hadn't been revealed. Part 10. The silence that changed everything. Jason's final message echoed through the living room. Tell Emily she's looking at the wrong person. No one spoke. After everything we'd uncovered, the forged signature, the fake company, the stolen money, the hidden safe, how could there possibly be someone else? Laura closed her notebook. People like Jason rarely accept responsibility. They often try to create doubt. Dad nodded. So you think he's lying? Maybe, Laura answered. But we don't ignore statements like that. We verify them. Over the next 3 days, investigators reviewed every document again, every email, every bank transfer, every phone record, every signature. When the final report arrived, it answered the question none of us could stop asking. Laura gathered everyone around the dining room table one last time. This investigation is complete. She placed a thick folder in front of us. The evidence shows Jason Brooks created the fraudulent company. He forged Emily's signature. He opened fake email accounts. He redirected the money. He acted alone. Rachel covered her face and quietly cried. Laura continued. We found no evidence that anyone else planned or knowingly participated in the fraud. She looked at Rachel. You signed documents without reading them. That was careless. But it wasn't criminal. Rachel broke down. I should have known. Laura nodded gently. Yes. But that's different from planning the crime. For the first time since Christmas Eve, the weight in the room began to lift. Not because everything was fixed, because the truth was finally complete. Jason had tried to leave one final lie behind. Even after being caught, he wanted the family to keep turning against each other. This time, it didn't work. A week later, the frozen money was returned to Grandpa's estate. The fraudulent company was dissolved by court order. The forged contract was declared invalid. The lakeside property remained exactly as Grandpa had intended, shared equally. No one won. No one lost. Justice simply restored what had always been true. Rachel filed for divorce. She didn't ask anyone to feel sorry for her. Instead, she took responsibility for every choice she'd made. She apologized to our parents, to the investigators, and finally, to me. We met at a small coffee shop near the lake. There were no Christmas decorations anymore, only the quiet sound of winter wind outside. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. I've practiced this apology 100 times. You don't have to make it perfect, I said. You just have to mean it. She nodded. I do. She looked down. I spent years making jokes because they made me feel important. I thought if everyone laughed at you, they wouldn't notice how insecure I was. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I'm sorry for every comment. 35 and still single. Maybe next Christmas. All of it. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I smiled sadly. I forgive you. She looked up in surprise. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. She nodded. I know. It just means I won't carry the anger anymore. For the first time in years, we hugged. Not because everything was the same, because everything had changed. Months passed. Life slowly returned to normal. Mom stopped asking when I would get married. Dad called every Sunday just to talk. Not to give advice, just to listen. Rachel started rebuilding her life one day at a time. As for me, I stayed in Chicago. I kept the job I loved. I bought a small condo overlooking the river. And for the first time, I stopped feeling guilty for living the life I wanted. The following Christmas, I drove home again. I wasn't sure what to expect. When I walked through the front door, Mom hugged me tightly. Then she smiled. I'm just happy you're here. Nothing about marriage, nothing about being single, just, I'm happy you're here. At dinner, the conversation stayed warm. People talked about books, travel, work, Grandpa. No one made me the joke. Halfway through dessert, Dad stood up and raised his glass. "I want to say something." Everyone looked at him. For years, I confused keeping the peace with doing the right thing. They aren't the same. He looked directly at me. The strongest person in this family wasn't the one who talked the loudest. It was the one who stayed kind even after being treated unfairly. "I'm proud to call you my daughter." The room was quiet, not the uncomfortable silence from last Christmas, a peaceful one, the kind that comes when nothing false is left to say. I smiled, not because I'd won, because I no longer needed to. As I looked around the table, I realized something Grandpa had known all along. Self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't seek revenge. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is calmly tell the truth, set a boundary, and refuse to let anyone decide your worth. That Christmas, no one remembered the joke about me being 35 and single. They remembered something far more important. The year our family finally stopped pretending. And for the first time in a very long time, Christmas actually felt like home.